On the night my father turned 55, in front of 30 guests holding champagne beneath string lights in our backyard in Plano, Texas, he took the gift I gave him, threw it on the ground, and said, "What kind of worthless junk did you give me?" Douglas King didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Then he raised his hand and slapped me across the face, right there, in front of everyone, in the same house I had been scrubbing on my hands and knees since sunrise. I ran out the front door with a backpack on my shoulder and a bruise already swelling along my cheekbone. What I didn't know then was that it would be the last time Douglas King ever laid a hand on me. Because before midnight, I would be sitting in the back of a black SUV across from a man who would say 5 words that would unravel nearly 2 decades of lies. But before I tell you how that happened, if this story resonates with you, take a moment where you're watching from and what time it is there. The name Patricia King? That's the name I was forced to live under, but it's not the name I was born with. I'm 21 years old, and this is the story of the last day I ever spent under Douglas King's roof. That Saturday started like every other Saturday. My alarm went off at 5 a.m., except this time, there was a 2-page handwritten list waiting on the kitchen counter, left by Hibiscus the night before. Sweep the patio, set up 32 folding chairs, press the tablecloth, slice lemons evenly, hand wash the serving platters because the dishwasher leaves spots. The King's house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in Plano. 4 bedrooms, brick exterior, perfect lawn. Douglas paid a landscaping service to maintain it, but he told the neighbors I did. Inside, the 12-seat oak dining table had already been polished by me, like it was every week. 2 cases of Napa Valley Cabernet sat chilling on the counter. A 3-tier cake from a boutique bakery in Legacy West cost more than I made in a week. My room? Not the finished guest suite downstairs, the storage space next to the water heater. No window. Just a twin mattress Douglas had dragged home from the curb when I was 9, and a wool blanket that never stopped smelling faintly damp, no matter how many times I washed it. Upstairs, Chloe's room looked like something out of a catalog. Queen bed, wall-mounted TV, vanity mirror framed in bright Hollywood bulbs. She was 23, still lived at home, still had a credit card connected to Douglas's account, still didn't know how to cook an egg, because that was what I was for. I had saved for 3 months to buy his gift, a genuine leather wallet from a department store at the shops at Willow Bend. $84. That may not sound like much, unless you're earning $11 an hour scrubbing sheet pans at a diner off Highway 75. I wrapped it in brown craft paper because I couldn't afford a gift bag. Standing in that kitchen at 5 in the morning, flour still on my hands from prepping appetizers, I had no idea that wallet would be the last thing I ever gave him. Douglas came downstairs at 10 sharp. Powder blue Ralph Lauren polo, khakis pressed razor sharp, cologne so heavy it announced him before he spoke. He stepped onto the patio like a general reviewing his territory, shifted a balloon cluster slightly to the left, examined the lemons floating in the water pitcher. "They're uneven," he said, not looking at me. "Fix them." Hibiscus appeared around noon, hair perfectly blown out, pearl studs, a cream linen dress she'd ordered online and made me steam twice. She ran her finger across the countertop, inspecting. Then she leaned toward Douglas and whispered, not quite quietly enough, "She got you something cheap. Just prepare yourself." I heard it. Of course I heard it. Chloe arrived last. New dress, fresh highlights, heels clicking across the hardwood floors I had waxed at 6 that morning. She handed Douglas a stainless steel Apple Watch, the latest model. $700, charged to the emergency credit card he gave her. Douglas opened the box and smiled. Really smiled. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "This is my girl," he said proudly to the first guests walking through the door, his arm wrapped around her shoulders. "She always knows what her dad likes." He said it loud enough for everyone to hear, and he didn't look at me. Not once. He never did when other people were watching. I was background noise. The girl balancing trays, refilling glasses before they emptied, wiping water rings off the coffee table before they could stain. Invisible, but useful. One of Douglas's colleagues from his financial consulting firm glanced at me and asked Hibiscus gently, "Shouldn't Patricia sit down and eat with everyone?" Hibiscus gave that polished smile of hers, the kind that looks warm from a distance. "Oh, she prefers helping," she said sweetly. "It's how she shows gratitude. You know how it is with adopted children." I kept moving, tray in hand, eyes down, because gratitude was the word they used instead of obedience. The gifts were opened after dinner. Douglas sat at the head of the table like it was a throne. 30 guests arranged around him. Neighbors, church friends, business associates. Champagne glasses shimmered under the patio lights. Chloe perched on the armrest beside him, phone raised, recording everything. Hibiscus stood behind him, one manicured hand resting on his shoulder like she'd curated the entire evening. I stepped forward with my gift. Brown craft paper, my handwriting neat across the front. "Happy birthday, Dad." For 1 second, just one, I thought maybe he would soften. He did sometimes, when no one was watching. But tonight, people were watching. He tore the paper open, pulled out the wallet, flipped it open, closed it, then lifted it up like he was presenting evidence in a courtroom. "What is this?" he said. The chatter died immediately. Forks froze midair. Someone carefully set down a glass. "I saved for 3 months," I started quietly. 3 months? He repeated, standing up. The patio chair scraped hard against the stone. 3 months, and this is all I'm worth to you? My throat tightened. "It's real leather." "Even the dog gets better." And then he hit me. Open palm, left side of my face. The sound was flat and sharp, the kind that doesn't echo because it doesn't need to. My head snapped sideways. A champagne flute tipped off the table and shattered against the patio floor. For a full second, that breaking glass was the only sound in the world. No one moved. Hibiscus stared at her plate. One of Douglas's coworkers studied his napkin like it required urgent attention. Chloe bit her lip and kept filming. Only one person stood. Clara Jennings, our next-door neighbor, 70 years old, barely 5 feet tall. "Douglas," she said firmly, "that was unnecessary." "Stay out of my family's business," he snapped. Clara sat down, but she didn't look away from me, and I never forgot that. I stood there, metallic taste filling my mouth, the wallet lying on the ground between us, and a strange thought flickered through my head. That slap will matter someday. I didn't understand why yet, but something inside me had started counting. I didn't go back to the party. I went downstairs, to the storage space next to the water heater. I pulled my old navy backpack off the nail on the wall, faded, zipper frayed. The only thing I still owned from high school. I packed fast. 2 shirts, 1 pair of jeans without holes, toothbrush, phone charger, and the envelope I had found months earlier in a box Douglas tried to throw away. The one stamped with a Texas state seal I didn't fully understand yet. From inside a shoebox under my mattress, I took out my cash. $340. Mostly 1s and 5s. Tips from the diner off Highway 75. I kept it hidden because Douglas monitored my bank account. $340. A backpack, and a bruise already darkening on my cheek. That was everything I owned. I walked through the living room on my way out. The party had restarted like nothing had happened. Douglas was laughing, champagne in hand, The wallet nowhere to be seen. Chloe was showing someone her phone, probably replaying the video. Hibiscus stood at the front window, watching me cross the lawn. She reached up slowly and pulled the curtain closed. No one called my name. Outside, the October air in Plano hit my face. The sting in my cheek flared again. It felt like a second slap. Suburban Texas at 9 o'clock at night is a different kind of dark. Not city dark, where there's always a convenience store glowing on the next corner. This was suburban dark. Streetlights spaced too far apart, driveways empty. Silence stretched thin between houses like it meant something. I walked down Preston Road in Plano with no plan. Not toward anything. Just away. Behind me, the music from the party faded, from full volume to bass, to nothing. I had gone maybe 2 miles when headlights slowed behind me. A black Cadillac Escalade, tinted windows, Texas plates. It rolled to a stop about 10 feet ahead. The back door opened. I should have run. Every instinct in my body told me to run. But I was exhausted from running. From shrinking, from surviving. So instead of running, I waited. A man stepped out first, mid-50s, tall, lean, wearing a charcoal overcoat that looked expensive without trying to be. Not flashy, just precise. His dark hair was threaded with silver, and when he stepped under the streetlight, I saw his eyes. Hazel green, wide set. The exact same eyes I saw in my own reflection every morning. Behind him, a woman stepped out. Red hair, sharp features, leather portfolio tucked under her arm like she had just left a courtroom. Professional. Alert. The man's hands were shaking. Even in the dark, I could see it. "I'm sorry to approach you like this," he said, his voice cracked. "My name is Nathan Brooks. And I believe I am your biological father." I took a step back. My shoulders hit a mailbox post. "That's not possible," I said automatically. "I was told my biological parents didn't want me." "You were told wrong." He reached inside his coat and pulled out a photograph. Small, worn. Corners softened from being handled too many times. A woman holding a toddler. The woman had auburn hair, high cheekbones, a smile that tilted slightly to one side. The toddler had hazel green eyes. "Her name was Laura Brooks," he said quietly. "She was your mother. She died in a car accident when you were 2 years old, and I have spent every single day since then trying to find you." I looked at the photo, then at him, then back at the photo. The woman in that picture had my mouth, the same slight tilt of the head. Looking at her felt like remembering a word you didn't realize you'd been searching for your entire life. The red-haired woman stepped forward. "My name is Olivia Grant. I am Mr. Brooks's attorney. Family law. We're not here to force you anywhere. We've been working through legal channels for months. When our investigator saw you leave the house tonight, we decided it was finally safe to approach." "You were watching the house?" I asked. She nodded calmly. "The birthday party gave us the opportunity to confirm your identity visually, and we saw you leave." I touched my cheek without thinking. The bruise throbbed beneath my fingers. Nathan Brooks noticed. Something behind his eyes broke, quietly. We sat in the back of the Escalade, Nathan on one side, me on the other, Olivia in the front seat with her portfolio open. The engine idled softly, heat low. It was the warmest I had felt all night. Nathan began telling me the story like a man who had practiced it for most of his life, and still wasn't ready to say it. "Your mother died on I-35 northbound," he said. "A delivery truck crossed the median. She was killed instantly." He had been in the passenger seat. Shattered pelvis, collapsed lung. 4 months in the ICU. When I was still unconscious, he said carefully. Child Protective Services placed you in emergency foster care. Standard procedure when there's no available guardian. That part made sense. What didn't make sense was the rest. When I recovered and filed to bring you home, I was told I couldn't. A caseworker named Simon Hale handled the case. Simon Hale had presented the family court with a signed document, a voluntary relinquishment of parental rights. According to that document, Nathan Brooks had permanently surrendered custody of his daughter. The judge approved the adoption, Nathan said. I never signed anything. His voice hardened. I was on a ventilator. I couldn't hold a pen. I couldn't even sit up. But the court had a paper with my name on it, and that was enough. By the time he hired an attorney to challenge it, it was too late. The adoption had already been finalized, the file sealed. His daughter had a new name, a new family, a new life somewhere in Texas he wasn't legally allowed to access. So I hired investigators, he said. Year after year, his jaw tightened. I spent more than I care to admit, but I would have spent everything. His voice didn't shake when he mentioned the money. It faltered when he said the word everything. Simon Hale, I asked quietly. How much did they pay him? Nathan glanced at Olivia. Olivia closed her portfolio with calm precision. That, she said evenly, is exactly what we intend to prove in court. The Escalade was still parked along Preston Road, hazard lights blinking amber against the dark. I sat there with my backpack on my lap, gripping the straps like a kid on the first day of school. And then I told them about the envelope. Last spring, Douglas decided Chloe needed a home yoga studio, which meant my storage space had to go. He tossed most of my things into a garbage bag and dragged it to the curb like it was nothing. When nothing you own is secure, you learn to check the trash before the truck comes. You salvage what you can. At the bottom of a damp cardboard box, underneath old report cards and a Ziploc bag of baby clothes, I found a manila envelope. Official looking. Texas state seal on the return address. Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. Inside was one document, partially redacted. Across the top it read, Title 4E, Adoption Assistance, Monthly Disbursement Summary. And in plain government font, Patricia G. King. I didn't know what Title 4E meant. I didn't know what disbursement summary meant. But I knew my name was printed on something the Kings had never shown me. So I folded it, put it in my backpack, and carried it for 6 months without fully understanding why. Now, under the dome light of the SUV, I handed it to Olivia. She unfolded it slowly. Her expression didn't change dramatically, but it shifted, like a poker player seeing the final card. This is the adoption subsidy record, she said. The state of Texas has been paying Douglas and Hibiscus King approximately $845 a month for your care, for over 18 years. She looked at me directly. That's $182,520. How much of that did you ever see? I thought about the curbside mattress, the damp blanket, the windowless room. None, I said. Nathan turned his face toward the window. In the reflection of the glass, I saw his jaw tighten so hard the muscle jumped. All those years, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. He called me a burden. I swallowed. I wasn't a burden. I was a paycheck. Olivia drove us to the Hilton at Granite Park in Plano, not back to the King's house, not to a shelter, just somewhere clean, quiet, safe. Nathan checked us in under his name. 2 adjoining rooms. The first thing I did when I walked into mine was freeze. I didn't know what to do in a space that belonged to me. The bed had white sheets that smelled like detergent, not mildew. There was a window. I opened the curtains and just stood there, staring at the parking lot lights. I hadn't looked out of a window from my own room in years. The memories started rising the way cold water does, slowly, steadily. I started cooking full family meals when I was 10. Douglas said it was character building. By 12, I handled all the laundry, dishes, and grocery runs, on foot, because he refused to drive me. Chloe got a Toyota Camry for her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass that expired after a month because no one renewed it. So I walked. An hour and a half to the diner off Highway 75 for my shifts. Douglas never let me keep my own documents. No birth certificate, no social security card, no state ID. When I asked for a driver's license at 17, he said, "What for? You've got nowhere to go." At the time, I believed him. Now I understood. It was by design. And the question kept circling in my mind. If Douglas hated me so much, why keep me? Why not send me back into the system? If I was worthless, why hold on? Now I knew. $845 a month. That's why. Have you ever met someone who treated you like garbage, but wouldn't let you leave? Someone who called you a burden while cashing a check in your name. If you have, you already understand that math. Hibiscus's voice echoed in my head the way it always did, sweet, controlled. Gratitude, Patricia. That's all we've ever asked for. Is that so difficult? No. What was difficult was realizing I had been grateful to people who were stealing from me. 2 weeks before the birthday party, before the slap, Douglas had already shown me who he was. I just didn't have the language for it yet. It was a Tuesday evening. He called me into his home office. That room had rules. Mahogany desk, leather wingback chair, books arranged by color, most of them never opened. He sat behind the desk like a judge. "Sit down," he said, not "have a seat." Sit down. He slid a stack of papers across the desk. 10 or 12 pages, dense legal print, blue signature tab at the bottom. "This is a voluntary agreement," he said. "It confirms that you choose to remain under my guardianship because you're not financially or emotionally prepared to live independently. Sign it." I picked it up. Most of the wording was legal fog, but one clause was crystal clear. It authorized Douglas King to continue managing all state and federal benefits associated with my dependent status. He wanted my adult signature, so he could keep collecting the subsidy even after I aged out. "Why do I need to sign this?" I asked. His expression didn't shift. "Because without this family, you're on the street," he said calmly. "You have no degree, no savings, no ID. You're signing it before my birthday. Consider it your gift." I didn't sign. I asked for time. He stared at me for a long moment, then closed the folder. Slowly, like placing a loaded weapon back in a safe. That's why he hit me at the party. It wasn't about the wallet. It was never about the wallet. It was because I said no. For the first time in my life, I didn't comply, and Douglas King could not tolerate that. The next morning at the Hilton, I woke up at 5 a.m. out of pure habit, heart racing, already mentally listing chores that didn't exist anymore. Sweep the patio, start coffee, set the table. Then I remembered. There was no list, no patio, no Douglas, just white hotel sheets and a wide window filled with gray October sky. A soft knock came from the adjoining door. Nathan stood there, already dressed, holding 2 paper cups of coffee from the lobby. He set one on the desk, then sat in the chair across the room. Not too close, not too far, just there. Like he was afraid if he moved too suddenly, I might vanish again. At 8, Olivia arrived with a garment bag. Inside were new jeans and a cream-colored cashmere sweater, tags still attached. "Something clean," she said simply. "Practical. Direct." I took them into the bathroom and changed. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the girl staring back. Not because of the clothes, but because for the first time in my life, I was wearing something no one else had worn first. When I stepped back into the room, Nathan's eyes glistened at the edges. He didn't cry. He just nodded slightly. "Laura used to look at the mirror that way," he said quietly, like she was deciding whether to believe what she saw. I sat on the edge of the bed. There was something I had to say. "I need proof," I told him. "Not the photo, not the story. A DNA test." My voice was steady. "If you're really my father, the science will confirm it. And if you're not, I need to know that too." Nathan didn't hesitate. "Of course," he said. No offense, no wounded pride, no guilt. "Olivia already located an AABB-accredited lab in Dallas. We can go today." Just like that. I had spent 21 years in a house where asking a question was treated like betrayal. And here was a man who answered as if questions were normal. "I've spent my entire life doing what I was told," I said. "If I'm going to trust you, it'll be because I choose to, not because I have nowhere else to go." Nathan set down his coffee. "That's exactly how it should be." The lab was a low brick building near downtown Plano. Clean, clinical, bright fluorescent lighting. A technician in scrubs swabbed the inside of my cheek, then Nathan's. They sealed the samples and told us results would take 3 to 5 business days. 5 days. I had waited 21 years to know who I was. 5 more felt like holding my breath underwater. While we waited, Nathan didn't bring gifts. Not the way Douglas used to. Transactional, strategic. He brought pieces. An old photo album. Laura, pregnant on a porch swing, one hand resting over her belly. Laura holding a newborn wrapped in a pink blanket. Nathan and Laura standing in front of a small brick bungalow in East Dallas with a red front door. The baby in the photos had hazel green eyes. Even then. "That's the house you came home to," Nathan said. "I still own it. I couldn't sell it." I studied every photo like it was evidence. Her face, her hands, the way she stood with her weight slightly on her left foot. The exact same way I stood when I wasn't thinking about it. "She's beautiful," I whispered. Nathan smiled softly. He looked just like her, especially the eyes. On the 5th day, my phone rang. I was sitting on the hotel bed, the album open in my lap. Olivia's voice was calm. "Emily," she said gently, using the name that felt both foreign and familiar at the same time. "The results are back. 99.997% probability of paternity." She paused. "It's confirmed. Nathan Brooks is your biological father." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just sat there holding the phone, staring at the photograph in my lap, and I felt something inside my chest shift. Not break, not shatter. Open. Like a locked door finally turning from the other side. 99.997%. To most people, that's just a number. To me, it was the first proof in 21 years that I wasn't an accident nobody wanted. Olivia's voice came back on the line, steady and focused. "We have what we need," she said. "Next step? Family court." What I learned later didn't come from Nathan. It came from court filings. From Clara Jennings' sworn testimony, from text messages Hibiscus eventually turned over. The morning after the party, Douglas called the Plano Police Department and reported me missing. Not out of concern, out of calculation. The responding officer ran my information and told him something he didn't want to hear. I was 21, a legal adult. If I left voluntarily, there was no missing persons case to open. She didn't leave voluntarily, Douglas insisted. She's mentally unstable. She can't function without supervision. The officer asked if he had documentation, a diagnosis, a guardianship order, any legal proof. He didn't, because I wasn't unstable. I was controlled. That night, according to Hibiscus's texts, the ones she would later surrender, Douglas paced the living room for 3 straight hours. Hibiscus sat on the couch, typing exactly what he dictated. If she talks to anyone, CPS, a lawyer, anyone, we're finished. Find the adoption file, all of it, the originals. Hibiscus responded, You said she doesn't know anything. Douglas replied, She doesn't, but if someone tells her where to look. He knew. He had always known. About the forged signature, about the bribed caseworker, about the $845 a month he had been collecting for nearly 2 decades on a child he treated like unpaid labor. Douglas carried it in his head the way some men carry debt, constantly aware, constantly managing, never once imagining the structure could collapse. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of what I would discover once I was free. What he didn't know was that the man he should have feared, the one who had spent nearly 2 decades searching for his daughter, was sitting 20 minutes away at the Hilton, building a case file 3 inches thick. Olivia laid the documents out across the hotel desk, like a surgeon arranging instruments. I had seen pieces before, but this time the evidence had weight. Look at this, she said, sliding a photocopied document toward me. It was the voluntary relinquishment of parental rights, dated nearly 2 decades ago. At the bottom, a signature. Nathan Brooks. Neat, slanted slightly forward. Then she placed another sheet beside it, a certified forensic handwriting analysis conducted by Dr. Caroline Hayes. She had compared the signature on that relinquishment form to 12 verified samples of Nathan's handwriting. Tax returns, mortgage applications, business contracts spanning 2 decades. The pen pressure is inconsistent, Olivia explained, pointing to the margins. The letter formation and the surname does not match the verified exemplars. She read the conclusion aloud. It is my professional opinion, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that the signature on the October 2005 relinquishment document was not executed by Nathan Brooks. She let that sit. Then she added the final document, a bank statement. Simon Hale's personal checking account. 6 days before the adoption was finalized, nearly 2 decades ago. A deposit. $6,200, wire transfer, from Douglas King's personal account. Not through a church, Olivia said quietly. Not through a charity. Direct, account to account. 1 week before the adoption was approved. I stared at the number. $6,200. That's what my identity had cost. My name, my father, my childhood. Traded for less than the price of a used sedan. Nathan sat across the room, arms folded, jaw tight. He had reviewed the documents before, but watching me absorb them, that was different. I could tell by the way he breathed, careful, controlled, like he was afraid of breaking something fragile. So the adoption can be undone? I asked. Olivia closed the file. Under Texas law, an adoption obtained through fraud, including forged consent, can be declared void. She met my eyes. Yes, it can be undone. 2 days before the hearing, a letter arrived at the Hilton front desk, addressed to Patricia King, not Emily Brooks, because Douglas still refused to believe I had any other name. Inside was a single handwritten page on King Financial Group letterhead and a photograph. Me, at 3 years old, sitting on Douglas's lap in the living room on that cul-de-sac in Plano, wearing a pink dress I don't remember. He was smiling. I was smiling. From the outside, it looked like a family. The letter read, "Patricia, I don't know who this man is or what he's told you, but he is not your father. He's a stranger manipulating a confused young woman. We are your family. We have been your family for 18 years. Come home. We can fix this. I forgive you for leaving. Dad." I read it 3 times. The word forgive hit differently each time. At first, it felt like a door opening, then like a lock snapping shut, then like a hand closing tightly around my wrist. He forgave me for leaving. After he hit me, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and felt the room tilt slightly. Nearly 2 decades of conditioning doesn't disappear because a lab prints 99.997%. Somewhere, deep inside, the voice I had carried since childhood whispered, "What if he's right? What if this is a trap? What if Nathan wants something too?" I looked over at Nathan, sitting by the window reading quietly. "How do I know you're not like him?" I asked. "How do I know you won't use me for something else?" He closed the book slowly. He didn't look offended. He looked like a man who had been waiting for that question. "You don't," he said. "Not yet." He folded his hands in his lap. "And I'm not going to convince you with words. Words are easy. The DNA is real. The documents are real. The court will decide what's true. All I'm asking is that you let the evidence speak." Then he picked up his book again. No pressure, no emotional manipulation, just space. And that space unsettled me more than control ever had, because it was unfamiliar. That night I couldn't sleep, so I did what I always did when the world stopped making sense. I examined the facts. I placed the Title 4E envelope on the desk, next to Douglas's letter. 2 documents. One from the state of Texas confirming Douglas and Hibiscus King received $845 a month for my care. One from Douglas claiming he was my father. If he loved me, why did I sleep beside a water heater? If he loved me, why did I never have my own birth certificate, my Social Security card, a single piece of identification in my possession? If he loved me, why was the document he forced me to sign designed to keep money flowing, not to keep me safe? The answer was in the math. It had always been in the math. Douglas didn't love me. Douglas billed for me. I called Olivia at 11 that night. She picked up on the second ring. "I'm going to court," I told her. "Not because I fully trust Nathan yet, but because I deserve the truth." "Oh, that's all we need," she replied. The following afternoon, a representative from the Texas Department of Protective Services arrived at the hotel. Mark Reynolds. Mid-40s, square jaw, measured tone. He had been assigned to review Nathan's petition. He asked about my childhood, the storage room, the chores, the missing documents, the isolation. I told him everything. He wrote quietly in a small notebook. When I finished, he didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't say, "That must have been difficult." He said, "If corroborated by the records, What you've described constitutes neglect, and the financial element may constitute exploitation of adoption assistance funds. Then, more softly, this isn't just about a fraudulent adoption, Miss Brooks. It's about a system that failed to protect you. I nodded. I wasn't choosing Nathan over Douglas. I was choosing truth over the lie I had lived in. I didn't witness what happened in the king's house the night before the hearing. I learned it later through Hibiscus's testimony and the messages she handed over. But you need to understand the mindset Douglas carried into that courtroom. The night before the hearing, he sat at the oak dining table, the same one I polished every week, rehearsing with his attorney. Not a specialist, not someone like Olivia. Just a local general practice lawyer from a strip mall office who had never handled adoption fraud. I have all the paperwork, Douglas insisted. Signed, filed, approved by the court. I've been a deacon at First Baptist for 22 years. I coach Little League. Everyone knows me. Hibiscus sat across from him, hesitant. What about the subsidy record? She asked quietly. What if they ask about the money? Douglas didn't even look up. They don't audit that. We're fine. Douglas said it like a man who had rehearsed the sentence so many times he believed it. Chloe drifted through the dining room on her way to the kitchen, scrolling on her phone. Her tone was casual, detached. The voice of someone whose worst inconvenience was a slow Wi-Fi connection. If Patricia doesn't come back, she asked, barely looking up, can I turn her room into a walk-in closet? Douglas didn't answer. He was already scripting his performance, the speech he would deliver in court. The generous church-going businessman who rescued a child no one else wanted. He had no idea that the judge would be reviewing a 3-inch file of forged signatures, wire transfers, and a forensic handwriting report. He didn't know the girl he trained to stay quiet had learned how to speak, and he certainly didn't realize that the man sitting across the aisle would be the father whose name he had stolen nearly 2 decades earlier. Douglas King walked into that courtroom like a man who had never lost. He was about to understand what losing felt like. The morning of the hearing, Olivia turned the Hilton conference room into a command center. A long table reserved for 6. 5 stacks of documents, each tabbed in color. I sat at one end with a cup of coffee going cold between my hands, while she walked me through everything like a strategist before battle. Calm. Precise. No loose ends. Stack 1, she said, tapping the first pile. DNA results. AABB accredited lab. Chain of custody documented. 99.997% probability. Irrefutable. Stack 2. Forensic handwriting analysis by Dr. Caroline Hayes. The signature on the relinquishment form does not match Nathan Brooks's. 42 pages of analysis. One clear conclusion. Stack 3. Financial records from the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. Douglas and Hibiscus King received $845 per month under Title IV-E adoption assistance for approximately 216 months. Total, $182,520. She let that number sit in the air. Mark Reynolds' findings confirm the funds were not used for your direct welfare. Stack 4. Reynolds' full report. Indicators of neglect. No medical records after age 14. No government-issued ID in your possession. Living conditions inconsistent with adoption assistance standards. She placed her hand on the final stack. Stack 5. A sworn statement from Clara Jennings. Clara, 70 years old. The only person in that backyard who stood up when Douglas hit me. She's agreed to testify that she observed a long-term pattern of unequal treatment, Olivia continued, and that she personally witnessed Douglas strike you at the birthday party. I hadn't spoken to Clara since that night, but she spoke when it mattered. Do I have to say anything in court? I asked quietly. Olivia met my eyes. Only if you choose to. The documentation stands on its own. Nathan had remained silent through the entire briefing. Now he spoke once. No matter what happens in there, he said, steady and certain, you've already won. You're free. I looked down at the 5 stacks, nearly 2 decades of lies reduced to tabbed folders. I shook my head slightly. Not yet, I thought, but I'm close. That afternoon, Nathan took me to Banana Republic at Legacy West. Not because clothes mattered, but because presentation did. You should walk into that courtroom looking exactly like who you are, he said. Someone who deserves to be heard. I tried on a navy blazer, white silk blouse, charcoal slacks. I stood in front of the mirror and studied the reflection. Straight shoulders, clear eyes. A woman who belonged at a table, not someone carrying trays behind one. When I stepped out of the fitting room, Nathan leaned against the wall, hands in his coat pockets. Your mother used to do that, he said softly. Stand in front of a mirror for a long time. Then give herself a small smile, like she'd made peace with something. I didn't smile, but I understood. Something inside me was settling. On the drive back to the hotel, Nathan slowed the car along a quiet, tree-lined street in East Dallas. He pointed toward a brick bungalow with white shutters and a red front door. A porch swing hung motionless in the cool October air. That's the house, he said, the one in the photos. I looked at it through the window. The house I'd been born into, the house I'd been taken from, and I didn't feel the ache I expected. I felt something quieter, a kind of recognition that sits in the body instead of the mind. That night, the night before the hearing, I sat on the hotel bed with a notebook I had bought from the CVS across the street. I didn't write a speech. I didn't outline arguments. I wrote one line. No matter what happens tomorrow, I will never go back to that storage room. I will never answer to a name that isn't mine. I will never again be grateful for being used. I slept 4 hours. I dreamed of a red door opening. Collin County Family Court, late October, Tuesday morning. The building was red brick with tall, white columns and echoing hallways that carried every footstep like an announcement. I arrived at 8:30 a.m., Nathan on my left, Olivia on my right. Mark Reynolds a few steps behind us, carrying a banker's box filled with records. Navy blazer, white blouse, hair pulled back in a low knot, no jewelry. My hands were steady, my back was straight. Douglas arrived at 8:40, gray suit, burgundy tie, hibiscus on his arm and a cream dress, Chloe trailing behind in something too casual for court. His attorney carried a thin file folder. Douglas carried himself like this was a routine inconvenience. Then he saw us. His eyes landed on me first. The blazer, the posture, the absence of the girl who used to stare at the floor. Then his gaze shifted to Nathan, to Olivia, to the banker's box Mark set down at our table. His expression didn't fall apart. It recalculated. I'd seen that look before. The silent math of a man who suddenly realizes he misjudged a variable. Hibiscus's hand tightened around his arm. Chloe instinctively reached for her phone, then thought better of it and slipped it back into her purse. Douglas and I locked eyes across the hallway. For the first time in my life, I didn't look away. The clerk opened the courtroom doors. Case number 22-417, in the matter of the adoption of the minor formerly known as Emily Brooks, legally recorded as Patricia Grace King. We walked through the same doorway. 2 sides, 2 histories. Olivia stood at counsel table like precision made visible. Your Honor, she began, addressing Judge Eleanor Whitman without notes. We are here to present evidence that the adoption of Emily Brooks, legally recorded for the past 18 years as Patricia Grace King, was obtained through fraud. She didn't rush, specifically through the forgery of the biological father's consent to relinquish parental rights, facilitated by a financial transfer to the assigned caseworker. She introduced the DNA results first, the lab certification, chain of custody documentation, 99.997% probability. Judge Whitman reviewed the report carefully, adjusted her glasses, set it aside with a small nod. Then came the forensic handwriting analysis. Dr. Caroline Hayes' 42-page report distilled into one conclusion. It is my professional opinion, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that the signature on the October 2005 relinquishment document was not executed by Nathan Brooks. Douglas's attorneys stood. Your Honor, my client possesses a legally executed adoption decree finalized nearly 2 decades ago. The petitioner is attempting to reopen a settled matter based on a paid expert's opinion. Olivia didn't turn around. A decree founded upon a forged signature is not settled, she said evenly. It is concealed. We are here to correct that concealment. Behind me, I heard Clara Jennings shift in her seat. A man in the gallery, later I would learn he was a reporter from the Dallas Morning News, scribbled something in a small notebook. 2 women from Douglas's church sat rigid in the second row, watching a reputation unravel in real time. Judge Whitman looked over her glasses at Douglas's counsel. The court will hear the petitioner's full presentation. Continue, Ms. Grant. Olivia moved to the financial records, and that's when the temperature in the room changed. Olivia projected the Title 4E disbursement summary onto the courtroom screen. The same document I had pulled from a trash bag 6 months earlier. Month by month, year by year, a column of numbers marching down the page like a ledger of my childhood. Mr. King, Olivia said, after the judge permitted direct questioning. The state of Texas paid your household $845 per month in adoption assistance for approximately 18 years. That totals $182,520. She paused. Can you explain to the court how those funds were allocated specifically for the child's welfare? Douglas straightened in his chair. Everything went to her, he said firmly. We fed her, clothed her, gave her a roof. 18 years of that isn't cheap. Olivia gave a small nod, as if she had anticipated the response. She had. Then she called Mark Reynolds. Mark approached the stand carrying his report like it mattered, because it did. He had inspected the King's home, reviewed the documentation. His voice was measured, almost clinical. The child's designated living area was a converted storage space adjacent to the home's water heater, approximately 60 square feet. No exterior window, no built-in closet. A quiet ripple moved through the gallery. The mattress exhibited visible water damage and wear consistent with prior outdoor exposure. He turned a page. I located no medical records for the child after age 14. No documented pediatric care. No dental records. No updated immunization history beyond 8th grade. Another page. The child had no state-issued identification in her possession. No Social Security documentation, no independent access to her adoption records. He looked directly at Judge Whitman. In my professional opinion, Your Honor, the conditions observed are consistent with neglect and inconsistent with the intended purpose of adoption assistance funds. Hibiscus began to cry, softly at first, then louder, the kind of crying that fills a room and demands sympathy. Douglas squeezed her hand, jaw set, performing the role of protective husband. But then Clara Jennings took the stand. Navy cardigan, practical flats, no performance. I lived next door for 12 years, she said plainly. I watched that girl mow their lawn, wash their cars, and hang laundry while the biological daughter lounged by the pool. She paused. I never once saw Patricia sit at the dinner table when guests were present. Her voice didn't shake. And on Mr. King's birthday, I watched him strike her across the face in front of 30 people because he didn't like the gift she gave him. The courtroom fell into the kind of silence that changes things, the kind where people quietly adjust what they thought they knew. Olivia waited for Clara to step down. Then she turned back to Douglas. Mr. King, are you acquainted with a man named Simon Hale? Douglas didn't hesitate. No. Olivia displayed a photograph on the screen. Glossy print, date-stamped. 2 men standing at a folding table during a church picnic. One was Douglas, younger, casual polo shirt. The other wore glasses and a Dallas County DHS lanyard. This photograph was taken at a First Baptist community event in June 2004, Olivia said. The man beside you is Simon Hale, the caseworker assigned to Emily Brooks's file prior to her adoption. She held his gaze. Do you still maintain that you do not know him? Douglas's jaw tightened. I may have met him briefly. Church gatherings are large. I don't remember everyone. You remembered him well enough to wire him $6,200. Olivia projected the bank statement. Douglas King, personal checking account. October 14th, 2005. Wire transfer. Recipient, Simon M. Hale. Can you explain this payment? That was a donation, Douglas replied quickly. A contribution to the church. It was transferred directly from your personal account to Mr. Hale's personal account, Olivia corrected calmly. Not to the church. Douglas glanced at his attorney. His attorney stared at the table as if it might offer an escape route. No objection came. I gave that girl everything, Douglas said suddenly, rising to his feet. His voice climbed sharp and loud. 18 years of my life. A home, food, stability. And this, in the gallery, the women from Douglas's church stared down at their laps. The reporter's pen moved faster. Olivia turned back to Judge Whitman, calm as ever. Your Honor, we ask the court to note Mr. King's description of parenthood as something he gave and now expects repayment for. That is not parenting. She paused. That is a transaction. Then she looked at me. The night before, I had told her I wanted to speak, not because the case required it, the evidence was overwhelming, but because I had been silent for 21 years, and some truths need to be spoken by the person who lived them. Your Honor, Olivia said, the petitioner would like to address the court. Judge Whitman nodded. You may proceed. I stood. Navy blazer, white blouse, hands steady at my sides. I looked at the judge, not at Douglas. This wasn't for him. Your Honor, I began. I'm not here for revenge. The word lingered in the air. I'm here because for 21 years, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my real name. I didn't know my mother's face. I didn't know that someone had been searching for me. And I didn't know that the documents placing me in that home were built on a forged signature. I took a breath. Mr. King says he gave me everything. I let that settle. Everything looked like a storage room without a window, a mattress taken from a curb, no medical care after 14, no birth certificate in my possession, no social security card. He struck me at his birthday party because I gave him a wallet I saved 3 months to buy. But the truth is, he hit me because I refused to sign a document extending his control over my life. I met the judge's eyes. To him, I wasn't a daughter. I was a line item. A few quiet breaths moved through the room. I'm not asking this court to punish Douglas King. I'm asking this court to acknowledge the truth, because I deserve that. And so does every child placed into a system that promises protection. I sat down. Silence. The kind that doesn't need commentary. Clara wiped at her eyes. Real tears, not performance. The reporter had stopped writing. Nathan sat motionless, hands folded, knuckles white. When I spoke, I remember thinking, why did it take 21 years to say something so simple? Have you ever carried something so heavy for so long that when you finally speak it out loud, you're surprised it fits into just a few sentences? That kind of weight is hard to explain to someone who hasn't held it. What happened next surprised everyone, especially Douglas. Hibiscus stood, not from the witness stand. She hadn't been called. She rose from the respondents' table, smoothed the front of her cream dress out of habit, and said, voice trembling, Your Honor, I need to say something. Douglas reached for her wrist. Hibiscus, sit down. She pulled away. It was the first time I had ever seen her pull away from anything. I wrote the check, she said. Her mascara was already running, but this wasn't earlier's polished display. This was raw, unfiltered. $6,200 to Simon Hale. Douglas told me it would help move the adoption through faster. I wrote it from our joint account. And I knew what it meant. Douglas's attorney dropped his head into his hands. Douglas's face flushed from collar to forehead, deep red, blotched. She's confused, he snapped. She's lying to protect herself. I am protecting myself, Hibiscus cried. Because I've been protecting you for 18 years, and I can't do it anymore. Her voice cracked. I watched you hit that girl. I watched you work her like an animal. And I stayed quiet because I was afraid of you, Douglas. I was afraid of this. Judge Whitman allowed her to finish. The courtroom was so still, I could hear the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Chloe sat frozen in the gallery, her phone limp in her lap, her mouth slightly open. Mr. King, Judge Whitman said, her tone controlled but edged with disbelief. One more interruption, and I will hold you in contempt. Douglas didn't move. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. The judge took 12 minutes to review the final documents. I know it was 12 because I watched the analog clock on the courtroom wall, the kind with the ticking second hand, and counted each rotation. When she finally looked up, she didn't address Douglas. She addressed me. Ms. Brooks, she said carefully, and I will use that name, as the evidence before this court compels it. My heart pounded once, hard. The court has reviewed the petition, the forensic handwriting analysis, the financial records, the testimony of the assigned social services representative and the neighbor witness, the DNA results, and the voluntary statement made by Mrs. King. She removed her glasses. The evidence is clear. She paused. The voluntary relinquishment of parental rights filed in October 2005 contains a signature determined by certified forensic analysis to be fraudulent. The biological father, Nathan Brooks, did not consent to the termination of his parental rights. A quiet breath moved through the room. The adoption that followed was therefore predicated upon forgery. Furthermore, the financial evidence demonstrates a direct payment to the assigned caseworker in close proximity to the finalization of that adoption. She turned toward Douglas. He sat rigid, chin lifted, hands flat on the table, posture intact even as authority drained from him. It is the ruling of this court that the adoption of Emily Brooks, styled for the past 18 years as Patricia Grace King, is declared void ab initio. The words hung in the air. The adoption is annulled in its entirety. Douglas did not blink. Additionally, the court orders Douglas and Hibiscus King to make full restitution of all Title IV-E adoption assistance funds received, totaling $182,520 to the state of Texas. Hibiscus let out a broken sound. Finally, this matter is referred to the Collin County District Attorney's Office for investigation into potential criminal charges, including, but not limited to, forgery, fraud in connection with public assistance, and child neglect. The judge set down her papers. The petitioner's legal name is restored to Emily Brooks, effective immediately. She lifted the gavel. Court is adjourned. The single strike of wood echoed. It was louder than the slap, louder than nearly 2 decades of silence. It sounded like something unlocking. In the gallery, Clara pressed both hands to her mouth. The churchwomen stood quickly, gathering purses, avoiding one another's eyes. The reporter closed his notebook and looked at me with something I couldn't quite name. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Douglas remained seated. His attorney was already stuffing documents into a briefcase, eager to disappear. For the first time, I understood that the man Douglas hired to defend him couldn't get out of that room fast enough. The hallway outside smelled faintly of floor wax and old radiator heat. Nathan walked on one side of me, Olivia on the other. Then I heard heels, fast, uneven. Wait! Chloe. Her makeup had streaked down both cheeks, foundation smudged. She looked smaller somehow, less certain. I didn't know, she said, breath uneven. About the money, the subsidy. I thought Mom and Dad paid for my tuition out of Dad's income. I didn't know it was... She stopped. She couldn't finish the sentence, and I understood why. The sentence ended with, your money. And saying it out loud would have made it real in a way Chloe wasn't ready for. I looked at her, the girl with the Apple Watch, the Toyota Camry, the queen-sized bed and ring light vanity, the credit card that never declined, the girl who filmed while Douglas hit me, the girl who once asked if she could turn my storage space into extra room for her shoes. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to walk past her without a word. But standing there in that courthouse hallway, my legal name restored, my biological father beside me, I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. I hope you figure out who you are without his money, Chloe, I said quietly. I really do. But that's your journey, not mine. She nodded once, and for a second, something flickered across her face. Not guilt, not yet, but the beginning of it, the hairline crack before the fracture spreads. Olivia touched my arm lightly. Nathan held the courthouse door open. I walked toward them. I didn't look back, not because I was angry, but because for the first time in my life, I had somewhere to walk toward, not just away from. Douglas stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps. He looked smaller. Not physically. He was still broad-shouldered, still imposing. But something structural had collapsed. His tie was loosened, his jacket unbuttoned. Hibiscus sat in their Buick at the curb, forehead pressed against the steering wheel, engine idling. I was halfway down the steps when he called out, "Patricia!" The name he had assigned me. The name the judge had just erased. I stopped, turned. He looked at me the way he always had, like I was something he owned, something he had invested in, something whose value he was still calculating. But beneath that, there was something else. Maybe fear, if Douglas King were capable of admitting fear. "After everything I did for you," he said, voice tight. "After 18 years under my roof, this is how you repay me?" I stood there in my navy blazer, October sunlight warm on my shoulders, and I felt it. Not anger, recognition. Even now, with the judge's ruling echoing in the air, with forensic proof of forgery, with restitution ordered, Douglas still believed he was owed. "My name is Emily," I said evenly. "And you didn't do anything for me. You did everything to me." I let the words land. And now it's over. I turned and walked down the remaining steps. Nathan stood by the escalade, door open. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He held that door the way you hold a door for someone you've been waiting nearly 2 decades to hold it for. I got in. The door closed. Through the tinted window, I saw Douglas standing alone on those courthouse steps, suit jacket hanging open, watching what he thought was his investment drive away. 6 months later, this is where I am. I live in East Dallas now, not in the brick bungalow with the red door. Nathan offered it, but I needed my own space. I rent a studio near Uptown with tall windows that flood the room with morning light. When I was apartment hunting, windows were the first thing I checked. I spent most of my life without one. Now I need to see the sky when I wake up. I'm studying for my GED, and I've enrolled in the culinary program at Dallas College, which is ironic. Douglas forced me to cook every meal for years. Now I'm choosing it. That's the difference, isn't it? Between something done to you and something you decide to do. The ingredients may be the same. The meaning changes everything. Nathan and I have dinner every Sunday. He's not a great cook. His salmon is overdone, the garlic bread slightly too crisp. But he makes it himself. He sets the table for 2, and he asks about my week. Then he listens to the answer. We're not perfect. There are awkward pauses. There are moments when neither of us knows what to say because you can't recover nearly 2 decades over salmon. But he's there, every Sunday, without fail. As for the Kings, Douglas and Hibiscus are awaiting trial. Forgery, fraud, child neglect. The house in Plano is under a second mortgage to cover the restitution order. Douglas was asked to step down from the Board of Deacons at First Baptist. He did not go quietly. Hibiscus, who cooperated with investigators, may receive a reduced charge. Chloe moved in with an aunt in Fort Worth and took a job at a retail store. Her first job. I go to therapy every Thursday. Dr. Ramirez has a small office with a ficus plant in the corner and a way of asking questions that don't push. They open. She doesn't tell me what to feel. She lets me find the feeling myself. After 21 years of being told what to think, that feels like learning a new language. Healing isn't dramatic. It's repetitive. Some mornings I still wake up at 5 a.m., heart racing, mentally running through chores that no longer exist. Then I open the curtains, and there's the sky. And I remember where I am. Last Sunday, Nathan and I sat on the porch of the brick bungalow with the red door. He had coffee, I had a book. We weren't talking, and it was the most peaceful silence I've ever known. After a while, he looked over and said, "I'm glad you're here." And I said, "Me too." My name is Emily Brooks, and for the first time in my life, I know exactly who I am. And what I want you to take from my story isn't anger. It isn't even justice. It's this. Silence protects the wrong people. For 21 years, I believed gratitude meant endurance. I believed survival meant obedience. I believed that if someone gave me a roof, I owed them my identity in return. I was wrong. No child owes anyone their dignity. No daughter owes someone repayment for basic care, and no one should confuse control with love. The truth didn't change my past overnight. It didn't erase the storage room, or the fear, or the years I lost. But it gave me something more powerful than revenge. It gave me clarity. Clarity that love does not demand silence. Clarity that family is not defined by paperwork. Clarity that accountability is not cruelty. It is light. If you are in a place where you feel small, where your voice feels dangerous, where you've been told you are lucky just to be tolerated, please hear me. You are not a burden. You are not a transaction. You are not someone's investment. You deserve to know your own name, and you deserve a life that belongs to you. If you stayed with me until the end of this story, thank you. Stories like this aren't easy to tell, and they're not always easy to hear. But if something in this journey felt familiar, if you've ever been silenced, underestimated, or made to feel like you had to earn your place in your own family, I hope you know you're not alone. If this story moved you in any way, please take a moment to like this video. It helps more than you think. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from, or simply write, "I understand." I read every single one. And if you believe more people need to hear stories about truth, accountability, and finding your voice, share this with someone who might need it. Until next time, protect your peace, and never let anyone convince you that being